The Building Brands podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join me, Robert Royer, president of Building Brands Marketing, and an entrepreneur who has successfully scaled multiple brands as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with a creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. Welcome to Rossman Radio. Today, I'm excited to introduce Hannah Jodoin. She's the CEO of Miss Hannah's Gourmet Popcorn. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to chat today. I know you have a really cool story behind the brand. So just kick us off with just a warm introduction to Miss Hannah's Gourmet Popcorn and a little of insight behind the brand.
Sure. So Miss Hannah's Gourmet Popcorn started when I was just 7 years old. My parents started making kettle corn at festivals, events, farmers markets. And since then, we've scaled to have many flavors, and hence the name change from Miss Hannah's Kettle Corn to Miss Hannah's Gourmet Popcorn early on. And we are celebrating our 25th year of business this year, which is pretty crazy. My parents started out with almost zero business plan, so we've come quite a way. We're based out of Oregon. We've traveled the majority of the West Coast to do festivals, events, farmers markets, art shows, things like that. But today we're focused on our direct-to-consumer business through our website on e-commerce, as well as in our brick-and-mortar store. And we are scaling through wholesale as well. So we have a full production kitchen. We make popcorn 5 days a week, 40 hours. It's pretty fun. And it's all over the nation now with some really cool retailers.
Very neat. Lots of changes in the business over 2.5 decades. So let's take it back a little bit. When you look at the growth that's happened over the last 25 years, what do you think have been some of the largest drivers behind the brand's growth, Hannah?
I think consistency is probably one of the biggest things. Early on, my mom was really dedicated to making sure that it was the highest quality possible and receiving customer feedback and pivoting quickly. And I think that has been one of the driving forces behind what makes our product, like our actual popcorn, better and different. She wouldn't let dad slack off, and that's still true today. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things, consistency. And I already kind of hinted at it, but listening to our customers as well. They'll tell us what they want. So it's a very fun conversation to be having with them for the last 25 years. And yes, we do still have customers from all the way back then. So it's a fun thing to get to hear what they used to love, what they love today, and what they're interested in for the future.
One thing that I find fascinating with brands that have a really long lifetime, like yourself, when you talk about some of those original customers, do you have any multi-generational customers? I find that a lot, where now their kids are customers as well, or that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to trace unless they offer us that conversation or that storyline. But
Yeah.
We were in business for 15 years before we had our first brick and mortar, and even then, I mean, that's 10 years ago now. So we'll be, talking to people in the store and they'll say, oh, when I was in middle school, I used to come into your store and it was just a pop-up. And, or I used to see you at my soccer games or my football games at people my age. So it's pretty interesting because those people are adults with children now. And so it's possible that those people are definitely passing it on to their kids. It's a fun thing to be part of.
Yeah, one thing that in talking to you prior to the show, one thing I found really interesting was how integrated the service part of the brand story is incorporated into your brand story, right? Because there's of course, a bunch of different product options out in the market for snacks, of this nature. But one thing that I think you've purposefully done is really craft the marketing message to involve that small batch kettle process as like a unique component of the story or a unique differentiator in this space. So how do you usually help consumers understand why that difference matters?
Yeah, we do that because it shows our care for our product and the quality of and the integrity of the product being the same as it was when we started out. Um, Only better, never never worse. So I think the small batch of it all makes it feel human, right? Like as humans, we definitely believe brands, but we believe the humans behind the brands more so and more often because that's something that's relatable to the human experience is being a human, right? And so when we talk about being a family and traveling and just trying to put food on the table, which is how it started out, I think that that communicates way more than, and we're a 25-year popcorn company. We know everything about popcorn. Like, okay, that may also be true. But I think the small batch essence of it really brings the humanness out because there are still humans standing over kettles and learning the techniques and the process to make that popcorn taste just like it did when my dad popped it 10 years ago, or I popped it 10 years ago, or my brother popped it 10 years ago. So it takes it's like an artistry, the popping process. And a lot of times, especially when you look at other popcorn brands, I don't really like the term competitor, but that's what they are. Um, they changed their process. A lot of them also started out grassroots the same way we did at festivals, farmers markets, things like that. Like Angie's Boom Chicka Pop, they started out locally in our region as well. They were another kettle corn vendor that we were competing for shows with, and they've scaled a ton, but their product is totally different now because of the method that they use, and that's fine. Good for them. They made some choices, but we've made different choices, and those choices put the humanness back into our story and our brand and reminds people that they're worth taking a little bit of extra time to make small batches of a product that they're going to enjoy and savor and have an experience around.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things I really like about it is it really reinforces that emotional benefit of the
Yeah.
brand and that emotional, underlying story of the family brand. So it doesn't become just another product. There's an emotional attachment to this, which has been very much a part of your family for 2.5 decades, that have been shared with other, or that has been shared with other families. I think you're touching on something that's really important for a brand like yours, which is it's not just this is a great product.
Hmm.
It's this is a great product, and this is the story of how you purchasing this product benefits the greater community, right?
Yeah, exactly. And people love to link arms with small brands, and they love to champion a story, right? I multiple times over the course of this conversation that we've had so far today have thought of like the Walt Disney Company. And I'm like, people love to cheer on Walt's story, even though, or like the next CEO and why he loves the story. Like people love a story. They love the
Hmm.
humanness of it, and they see themselves in failures and success of others. And they feel championed to try things themselves or whatever it may be. Like they just care. They care more when there's a story behind it and there's a reason to participate and there's an invitation. I think that's the biggest thing that sometimes people that don't really have a ton of intention around their brand story, other than being like the top dog in their category,
Yeah.
they miss an invitation to people to feel part of something and like they're making a difference by being part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a number of studies are showing us that story in the consumer journey is becoming more pivotal with the newer buying generations. Gen Z, for example, it's become more apparent in their consumer journey as they kind of decide who to purchase from. So I think you're really wise in recognizing that, and I think that's where a lot of brands can make a mistake as they scale and they get to this point 25 years in. They can start to lose some of that foundational story that was there at day one. So I think that's part of what's kind of stabilized y'all's success over the years, in my opinion. So talk to us a little bit. Going a different direction. You've moved over the years from in the farmers markets to CPG retail space. So
Mhm.
you've seen it all in terms of retail. What surprised you the most about scaling the business in that time frame, Hannah?
Oh, doing it the way that we've committed to doing it, it just takes more time. And so I think what surprised me the most is the amount of time it takes. And then when you want to add more products, if you will, more flavors and things, it's just more time. And I think that's a big piece. But I also feel like there were a lot of like fallacies that we believed, having been kind of homegrown with the festivals, events, and farmers markets. It was very like, we're here, there are people in attendance, we get a slice of the pie. Our slice of that pie depends on how well we perform at every second that this thing is open.
Hmm.
And so when you translate that to, we're here every day and we're not going anywhere and we don't really have competitors at this shopping center that we're at, or whatever it may be, you kind of have to challenge your thinking. And so maybe that's my biggest takeaway, or my biggest thing that surprised me for scaling over the last decade, is challenging your thinking constantly. You think you have something figured out, and then what if there's a different way to go about that? An example of that would be, we used to believe that because of festivals and events, if we were slow, we had to be popping, and so they had to smell it. We thought it was like we believed it was an impulse buy, and sure, there are elements of it being an impulse buy still, absolutely. But the trigger for people that we thought was enticing them, it was the smell, and so we would constantly figure out how to wait to pop a batch because there, you could still smell it, and there's a big crowd walking this way, so let's turn the kettle on. And that carried into being at our first brick and mortar that was full time, because we popped on site there. We didn't quite have our kitchen yet. And so we thought, this will never work if we don't schedule a popper every day. They have to see it and smell it. And that's the experience. Well, there was one day that nobody could pop and everybody had to be somewhere. And we had a customer service person only. And it was the beginning of a new era, because she sold way more product that day than we had done on that same day of the week any other day previous. And it's because she was able to do the customer service and the experience of the, like, yeah, taste them all. Yeah, like, let me tell you about them. Yes, you have all my attention. Not, I'm trying to put labels on popcorn and put it on the shelf and restock it and bag it and do everything right. So I think we thought, we won't make it if we don't have a popper every day. And what it turned into was, wait, we could have actually really unique experience with the customer, by giving them our full attention. And what if we kind of saw these as different processes? And that was never something we could consider previously, because we're in a 10 by 10 tent bumping into each other. So just restructuring the way you think about things, and figuring out what the goal is of it, has been something that I have always come back to, for sure, when I'm considering, but wait, we don't have to still do it that way.
Yeah, that's interesting, Hannah, that you say that, because I imagine, with that service component being, so pivotal to part of the value proposition, I imagine that's become harder as you get deeper and deeper into the retail space. So when you talk directly to customers, obviously the story clearly connects based on what you're saying. But what's been the largest challenge about translating that message to retail buyers?
Yeah. What's interesting about that is we're still figuring it out, I would say.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the people purchasing for these large entities of gourmet grocers or small gift shops that we're talking to and trying to communicate that brand story to them, there's still people that care about that story as a consumer themselves, right? And so you add the layer of, and I'm a buyer for this store. Well, sure, we have to add in some different parts of the conversation to make that relevant, but at its root, they're a human too, who cares about the story too. And so I think we eventually, my mom and I kind of stumbled through that as we started going to the fancy food show and expos and things where we were putting our name out there a little bit more broader scope. And that's the question we would get is people would walk by, they'd like not really slow down their gait at all. And they'd look and they'd be like, you're like the ninth popcorn brand I've seen. Why should I, like, what makes you different? And I was like, we're small batch, we're family owned, and someone stands over a kettle. Like, we're a kettle corn company that has scaled. That's what we are. And that's not true of everybody else. A lot of them, they're like, oh, there's awesome percentages and margins in popcorn. I'm going to start a popcorn brand. And that'll last while the trend is there, you know, like protein popcorn or tallow or whatever. They're trending. Yeah. But we've never really jumped on trends because we have more than the trend to like make people care. So, and then the other thing I would say is trying to communicate that part of the story on the packaging, because that's our only experience with them. So their experience with the packaging being, we have a pretty cool like stand-up pouch that is quite, it just feels elevated. And there's storytelling on it, and it's a little bit whimsical, and it's, you know, it's different than just a classic pillow pack of chips next to the chips on the chip aisle. It feels like an intentional thing. So all of those elements kind of tell the story when we don't get to be there handing them the product and convincing them of their favorite flavor.
Yeah, and I know online on the D2C, you know, presentation on the website, you do a good job. There's a video on the homepage showing the small batch process. Yep. You have that packaging displayed. The first thing you read on the packaging is handcrafted in Oregon or something along those lines, you know, putting that locality effort on there. So you've obviously been very intentional in trying to be sure before you get to the nuts and bolts of the product, the pricing, the shipping, you know, so on and so forth, you've already been exposed to some of these pivotal key elements to the brand. So there's been some intentionality there in the consumer journey. Hats off to you for that, because you've done well with that. So, you know, give us a little bit of, let's just play, you know, like devil's advocate for a second, right? Like if there's there's always an area of opportunity within the business, right? So if you had a marketing wand and you could solve one major marketing or growth challenge this year for the brand, what would that be, Hannah?
Yeah, I would love to solve the problem of people knowing we exist, probably. I think we do have a corner on the market with the people that we know it works well for, but then when it comes to diversifying that conversation from just being directly with the consumer, ordering it directly from me, to being with the buyer and them, you know, when it comes down to it, often a buyer's job is to make money make sense on a spreadsheet. And so the story you have to weave it in a way that makes them consider that maybe the numbers aren't the end all, and that they can carry that with them and have something to pass along that gives them the yes. So I think for me, I would like to replicate the invitation we've always had to the consumer for retail partners and people who want to offer their clients, their consumers, their guests, whatever it may be, the use case, whether it's a cruise or a state park, whatever, that they would join in with us in wanting to offer something that is unique and elevated and human, and that people deserve the option to spoil themselves once in a while. Like, it doesn't have to be a bag of Lay's chips. It can be, wow, that was like somebody made that for me. That's so cool. So I think really trying to bridge the gap of how to find those people and talk to them in such a way that's the same way, but with the invitation of, and you can put it on your store shelf if you want.
That's really fascinating, because you essentially have two different extensions to your marketing strategy. You have your D2C extension, and then you have your reseller extension. Although the D2C extension certainly supports the reseller component, obviously. So on the reseller component, do you have any sort of like partner package of like supporting collateral, expressing the brand story, or things like that that are provided to resellers to help get that story to the end consumer?
Yeah, I'm like I mentioned the packaging, but if you're we're trying to figure that out. Like I think that's really the biggest thing that we're navigating right now. We launched our wholesale reselling entity in 2020 out of necessity, and so we've
Yeah.
just kind of like we catch our footing at the next phase, and we want it to grow because we think our product should be shared. And so we want to get it out as far as we can. And education comes with that, right? Because it matters in the Pacific Northwest that we are handcrafted in Oregon. But how do we pull out a different part of the story when you're talking to people in Maine, right? Um, so that's what we're developing. I've definitely tried to pull the audience and try to essentially replicate those conversations we've had with our consumers early on in the early days where they were telling us they wanted different flavors to then now I'm standing here and you see the value in my product, but what's it missing for you to do this, like, and translate it to your consumer and just doing it all over again. Honestly, it's the next phase of growth for us. And so wanting to do it well and knowing we won't from the jump, but our intention is to continue to do that. Um, yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. What do they need? That's the question.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing. It's like ever evolving, right? Uh and of course you're wearing many, many hats as the CEO. So it's, you're being pulled a lot of different directions at any given time, but it sounds like regardless, you're making a lot of great progress and the brand has been very stable and now it's just expanding that footprint. So going back to being the CEO, Hannah,
Mhm.
obviously you're juggling many different balls on any given day. If there
Mhm.
was one like leadership material, whether it's a book, a podcast, or something that you would recommend to other leaders, other founders, or executives,
Yeah.
what would it be, Hannah?
I love that question because I love a takeaway. Uh, I have a couple that I'll share.
Let's do it.
Um,
Yeah, there's no
one of
limits.
one of
Let's.
the things I love it, thank you. Thanks for the permission. One of the things that I have found, once I kinda came into my own in really actually being allowed to kinda take over because I essentially took over my family business, right? While my
Mhm.
family's still involved, and that's been difficult. That said, what I've done is taken a lot of processes and systems and put feet on them and words around them, and then hired people to do them and replicate it so that quality stays the same. That's what you do when you build a brand. Somebody had to start out, and then eventually you got to pass off tasks to other people, make sure they keep
Sure.
up the quality. And so that's at its baseline. That's what I've done. What you do eventually is pass off all the jobs. And then you're the CEO kind of getting called on from all sides of here's the fire I don't know how to put out and let me so you can kind of get stuck. You can get a little bit stuck in this cycle of and I'm everybody else's helper so that they know how to do their jobs because I'm the MacGyver here that knows how to do everything. And what you can get lost in is being in front and kind of casting vision. And so, what has been transformational for me in a couple different iterations over my career has been having like a coach of some sort, having a business coach. And that's like, yeah, maybe don't just Google someone in your area. You kind of want to vet them, make sure you want your life for your business to look a little bit like something that they've made. But I really need the accountability, like the same way that I provide accountability for my leaders and they come to me and I challenge them. I don't really have anyone doing that for me in the same way. And so if I'm gonna get and I can't expect that of anyone, below me to provide that for me, even if they are my mom and I love their ideas, right? Like at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to be in front and to be in charge. And and carrying the torch. And so having someone that's smarter than me challenge me and tell me either that's a good idea, even if you pitch it to everyone on your team and they think that you're crazy because you've been the one doing the crazy things. And then now they have jobs because of it. So it's okay that you're like considering something else that's crazy. Because when you're growing a small business, you're kind of blowing up everything that was normal 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And you kind of got to keep people like you protect them from that a little because you want their buy-in and you want them to stay. But on some level, you're just constantly rocking the boat, you know? Um, so having someone that understands that, encouraging you in, yes, that's a good idea, or I don't think that's your next thing you need to be doing has been really beneficial for me. And then also understanding dynamics of groups and teams. If you don't know how you show up or how other people are showing up and what they're motivated by, you're going to have a much harder time. And so I would say the path of least resistance has been me doing the work to figure out who I am and how I thrive, and then being able to navigate that about the people that I lead so that I can support them better because they're not me and my only experience is mine. So everybody comes in with their own stuff. So I really like the predictable success model. That's a good one. Look that up. It's like 4 kind of archetypes, and you can have all 4, but you have a score in each one. That's really helpful for groups, teams, and also the life cycle of an organization. That is all predictable success. Uh, Kind of helps you not feel crazy to like, oh, this is hard this week, or we feel awesome this week. Well, yeah, some things added up to be that. So that's a thought process I'm living in around right now, dealing in and around the predictable success model a lot these days.
I wrote that down. I actually haven't heard of that framework, so I'm going to go check that out after the pod. So I'm glad I asked the question.
Yeah.
But you touched on something, Hannah, that I want to just double click on. So for some executives, the cost of hiring a coach could somehow be a mental or a quite literal barrier.
Yeah.
And so for me, having owned and managed multiple businesses, I think there were 2 components along those lines that were really important for me that I always try to share with other executives and entrepreneurs. So the first one is mentorship at the very least. If you don't have a coach, finding a mentor out there. And usually the best mentorship involves a 2-way mutually beneficial relationship where there's some things the mentor can actually learn from the mentee as well. And that's been one thing for me that has worked really, really well, having some strong mentors that also got some things that they were able to learn from me, especially in the instance of some of my mentors were quite a bit older. I'm pretty tech savvy in the digital age. So there were some, some give and take components, but then also building a success circle, of people around me that really probably completely different industries in most instances, but they had similar goals and aspirations from a lifestyle and a professional career standpoint as me. So something is, casual, such as going on vacation with a fellow entrepreneur with our spouses, and we spend some time together, really cultivating that work-life balance of our spousal relationships, which are important as well, right? To our mental health. But then a 9 a.m. coffee chat at the beginning of the morning where we take 1 hour and we talk about our problems that we're facing as entrepreneurs and kind of bounce those ideas off each other to look at things from a different perspective. Those 1 hour chats are almost invaluable. So I think building a success circle, which is what you're alluding to really, is so critical to be, especially if you're in a space where, let's say yourself, I'm sure it's like, me in the digital marketing space, I can't just go talk to 5 other executives of digital marketing agencies in the region and go, hey, let's bounce ideas off of each other, because they all might look at it like a competitive, viewpoint rather than a collaborative viewpoint. So you have to find some similar entrepreneurs in similar situations, but not the exact same. And a lot of times that helps you look at it from a different perspective beyond just your industry as well. So you're really sharing some golden nuggets with our audience here, Hannah, and I respect and admire you for that. Before we close out the show, because this has been a pleasure and a privilege, and it sounds like you're a wealth of knowledge, any final notes for our listeners and viewers that you would like to kind of leave the show off on?
No, I love that you landed our conversation around, supporting other people maybe in a similar spot or dreaming about being in a similar spot. And I've talked about people and story this whole time, and that's what it's about. So I think kind of remembering like why you're doing what you're doing. At the end of the day, I love popcorn, sure. But I'm not doing what I do because of popcorn. I'm doing what I do because of people. And I love to see people thrive. I love to see people have a reason to gather around and share some joy over an experience of trying a new flavor that they thought what they were going to hate. Whatever it may be, like we get to be part of that. And so, whatever it is for you, um, remember that. I think that's the thing that I hold dear is that I get to impact people's lives because of the work that I do. And that's on many levels. That includes my team, that includes everyone. But uh, that's one of the things that's most important to me. So holding that dear and knowing what your personal purpose is in the thing that may feel hard that you're navigating through, like why you're doing it is an important thing to hold close.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. This has been a pleasure, Hannah. Hannah, where can we find out more about Miss Hannah's Gourmet Popcorn online?
Yeah. MissHannah'sPopcorn.com. Uh, we have 19 year-round flavors and we rotate through seasonals. So depending on when you're listening to this, there's going to be something fun and exciting in addition to our staples that are delicious. There's also a selection of flavors on Amazon. That's directly through us as well, if that's your speed, but there's more variety on our website. And we also have on our website a place that you can go type in your address or your zip code and find a store near you. That would be another way that would be really cool to get out there. If you love it, go tell a local retailer that you love to pick it up and we can work with them.
Well, Hannah, it's been a privilege. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.